honestly, I really don't think I'm gonna be able to go over every single prediction or speculation I have for Nintendo in 2023 in just a single video. Sometimes we do live streams that go on for 3 to 4 hours and we still don't quite get everything. But I'm definitely going to try. I'm going to try and go over every little angle, or at least the main angles, I should say, because we could go on for hours and hours, but the main angles on what I think we could be seeing from Nintendo in 2023. And let me tell you, I am very, very excited for what's to come. I think this could be the best year we've seen from Nintendo since 2017. And I know, we've talked about this for the last couple of years. Oh, this is the year, it's gonna be the big year. But there's one thing that we have for sure going for 2023 over the last few years that really gives it a strong chance to be the best year since 2017, if not even surpassing it. And that is the fact that The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom is slated for May 12th of 2023. Not just a blanket 2022 like it was this current year and then it was eventually delayed, but a specific May 12th timing. Not to mention, we've gotten news officially from Nintendo that they are working on localization already, and we've gotten the ESRB rating as well. So this game, seemingly, is content finished. They are approaching total completion with the localizations. It is truly around the corner. This game is coming out May 12th. It's not getting delayed. If it is delayed, my gosh, I'm sorry, but all signs are pointing towards this game coming out on time, and that alone makes 2023 an incredibly exciting time. Tears of the Kingdom is going to be hype. This game has been in development for an incredible amount of time, the longest amount of time between Zeldas we've ever seen, so sure enough, this is going to be a really good one. Welcome everyone, this is Honest Restart, and yes, we're going to be going over our 2023 Nintendo predictions today. And I have quite a lot. It's going to be extensive, it's going to be significant. I have no idea how I'm going to get this video out on time. I am recording it, what time is it? 1:30 in the morning, so I can hopefully get it done in time before I have to go to do Christmas Eve festivities with family and such. So we're working on this now. Hopefully it's out in time for, Saturday, and hopefully you guys enjoy it. But yes, there's a lot to talk about here, and honestly I wasn't sure how to go about doing this because really a lot of this hinges on will there be new hardware next year. And honestly, I don't know that answer. These are predictions, they're speculations. So what I decided I was going to do is I'm going to go month by month on what I think we'll see around that time. And I'll talk about what may happen then, what may not happen then. And in that way, I'll sort of account for there being new hardware, or if there's not new hardware, kind of giving predictions from both angles there. But spoiler alert, I am leaning more towards new hardware. I think part of that's simply because it's a little bit more exciting for me. So yes, I am biased, but I think there is logic to be had here. So another spoiler, I am going to predict that Tears of the Kingdom will launch alongside some sort of new hardware from Nintendo May 12th, but it could also happen maybe later in the year. It may happen in 2024. Obviously, that's a possibility. We don't know. But I feel like with the likelihood of Nintendo wanting to launch new hardware with Zelda as they usually do, and them skipping out on that opportunity, and then the likelihood of there being some sort of major Mario release this year, and them not using a major Mario release to push new hardware, that to me feels unlikely. That point alone, I think, makes me think that more likely there will be new hardware at some point in 2023. Even if it's not May with Zelda, what about October or November with the new 3D Mario? Spoiler alert, I think there's a chance that's going to happen as well. That will be a part of my predictions. So I think there's a really good chance we see some sort of new hardware. Switch came out in 2017, Lite came out in 2019, OLED came out in 2021, and now we're entering 2023. There is a clear pattern here, so that's a whole other point to support that idea. So I think there's a really good chance new hardware comes. Maybe it's not quite what a lot of people were sort of speculating, but I think there's going to be something, and we're going to be talking about that as well. So let's just get into things starting from January. So in January, we already know we're getting Fire Emblem Engaged. That's confirmed information. It's coming up this 20th. It's going to be a hype game. I recently put out a graphics analysis comparing it to Three Houses, and I think the game looks pretty darn good. I'm very excited for this game. But I think there's going to be more than just Fire Emblem to worry about in January. One other thing I think has a decent chance of showing up is actually GoldenEye. Nintendo confirmed GoldenEye would be coming. It hasn't come out yet last I checked. Maybe I missed that, but I feel like I would have noticed that. So I think that's probably coming out before the next Nintendo Direct. And if it's not, it's going to probably be shadow dropped when that Direct happens. And I think there's probably going to be a general Direct in February, as there usually is. So we'll be getting to that. But yeah, I'm going to say that GoldenEye is going to come out in January. Could be wrong, totally, but at some point in the early year, I expect GoldenEye to release on Nintendo's online expansion pack. But I also think there is a potential for another Direct before the general February Direct. What Direct might that be? Well, I got two considerations here. I think there's going to be at least one more Mario Bros. Movie Direct before the movie comes out in April, early April. And maybe we see that in January. But I think, given that January is just obviously a month removed from December, where we got a whole bunch of Mario news then, I think they're going to space things out a little bit. And I don't think we're going to see that then. There will be marketing for the Mario movie throughout January. We'll get new details, most likely, in some way or another. Maybe McDonald's will leak more information or what have you. And probably the same for a little bit beyond that. But instead, what I'm going to talk about is, yes, the announcement for new hardware. Now, I am hesitant to say for January because, well, January also just a month removed from the holidays. Would Nintendo really announce new hardware immediately after Christmas when people already bought Switches and then they'll feel burned for it? Maybe. But you could also argue, well, some people may still have some gift cards lying around. They may be able to make some pre-orders. And at the end of the day, this is just going to be another option. So let's get to that. Let's get to what this Direct could be. And again, it may not happen. So if there's not new hardware coming on, to launch alongside Tears of the Kingdom, we're not going to see any sort of hardware announcement in January. It's going to happen way later. And we'll talk about that possibility later into the video. But let's say it happens in January, which, let's say I'm about 40% on, right? I'm like 80% the new hardware is coming out in 2023, and 40 of that 80 is that it's announced early on January, early February to launch alongside Tears of the Kingdom. So I think they're actually not going to do like a trailer like they did with the Switch Lite or the Switch OLED, because I think it's going to be something a little bit more substantial than that. But I also don't think it's going to be like treated exactly as a next generation system, even though in a lot of ways it will be. I think it's going to have a Direct. I think Nintendo's going to put out a Direct, and they're going to say something along the lines of, tune in on such and such date and time for information on the next iteration in the Switch family. Something like that. So the way that's going to be worded is going to suggest it's going to be part of the Switch family. And this is what I think is really interesting. Because right now the Switch is approaching the Game Boy and Game Boy Color, which is the second best selling set of systems in history. Slightly under the PS2. I think Nintendo's overall goal is to pass those systems. And I think Nintendo does want to abide by this 10-year plan they talked about for the Switch, but I think some people miss out on the whole thinking behind what a 10-year plan for the Switch would be. So think about when Switch initially came out in 2017. The 3DS was going on for a few years then. There were still new games coming up for the 3DS in 2019. For the first few years of Switch, 3DS was selling at cheaper prices, people were still buying it to some extent, and they were selling it, it was still on the market. So, I think something similar is going to happen for Switch. Switch will still receive new games, it will still be relevant when new hardware comes around for maybe 2 to 3 years, maybe even a little bit more than that. And it'll be a little bit cheaper, it'll be easier for people to buy, it'll still be relevant, but Nintendo will also be transitioning over to their next system. So, I think this Direct will come. I think the Direct will start to showcase more footage from Tears of the Kingdom, and maybe they'll show off a little bit more footage for a couple other games, say maybe games that already exist, like Smash Ultimate, Mario Kart, Mario Odyssey, Xenoblade Chronicles 3, Splatoon. They'll showcase a few other games looking and running better on this system. So one of the big things I think the system will do is that any previous Switch game will automatically have a more smooth frame rate, and there will be some sort of upscaling technology. We've talked about DLSS before. Basically, it's something that improves images that with artificial intelligence to make them look even better with minimal processing power. It's a more efficient way to get higher resolutions, basically. And it's going to take older games and make them look better. And it's going to be a huge selling point for this system. The Switch is seeming really dated. A common complaint for a lot of Switch games is they look kind of blurry, they don't have great performance. This system will fix that. It will improve current Switch games. So it's still going to be kind of catered towards an option for the Switch family, and it's going to work in that way. But I think it will start to have some exclusives. I don't think Nintendo's going to be doing exclusives, but I think some third parties will. So this is where I think we may start to see the release of games like, for example, Call of Duty, or maybe one of the Resident Evil games that are supposed to come out next year. Maybe there'll be a better running version of Hogwarts Legacy, for example, which was recently delayed past the release for Tears of the Kingdom. Some people have speculated that there may be some sort of connection there. This all could maybe be connected. So I think they're going to have this Direct to showcase the improvement of the games in this Direct. We'll see some new footage of Tears of the Kingdom. They'll announce the pricing of it. They'll announce what's coming alongside Tears of the Kingdom. And the way the system is going to be sort of marketed, I think it's going to be treated more something like a Game Boy Color. So think about this. We had the Game Boy, which played handheld games back in the 90s, but eventually got the Game Boy Color, which took a whole bunch of games that were running on Game Boy and they added color to them. Game Boy Color automatically improved the visuals for already existing games, pretty much the entire library. But there were the occasional exclusive games that came on the Game Boy Color, but for the most part, people were playing the Game Boy Color to play Game Boy games, just looking and running better with the occasional exclusives. So I think that's kind of how this next Switch is going to be. It's going to be, in a lot of ways, kind of function like a mid-gen refresh, but it's going to keep the Switch relevant for years to come. And maybe Nintendo will start to treat it almost like an iPhone situation, where this system will run really well. It'll play some third-party exclusives, it'll run games better, but after a few years, they'll start to phase out the base Switch, but maybe this current Switch will still be able to play some of the new games coming out on the newer iterations of Switch. That's kind of a weird idea I have, but I do think that the idea of current generations is going to continually get more and more blurry as we progress deeper and deeper into the future. But that's the kind of thinking I have right now. Could I be wrong? Absolutely. But I do think Nintendo's going to start to modernize the way they handle their systems, and this is how I'm predicting they're going to do it. We shall see. So going beyond this new hardware Direct that we get maybe late January, early February, well, we're going to be entering February, and there's going to be things to see in February. We already know about Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe. That's going to come out. It's going to be just fine. But there's going to be other things to sort of worry about in terms of Nintendo in February. I think we're going to get the general Nintendo Direct in February. There's going to be a number of announcements giving us more details on Tears of the Kingdom. Something a little bit more solid than just a few glimpses of footage like we saw in hopefully January. And also we're going to get a Pokemon Presents after that February Direct later on, as we usually do in February. But then let's enter March. In March, we're going to get Bayonetta Origins, Soraya and the Lost Demon, that game that was announced at the Game Awards, the Bayonetta prequel. But I also think we're probably going to see Wave 4 of the Mario Kart DLC. March will be a little bit of a down month before the hype that continues on throughout the rest of the year. But with Mario Kart DLC and Bayonetta Origins, I think it'll be okay. But then in March, I think there's going to be a few other cool things to get excited about. I think in March, we're going to get another Super Mario Bros. Movie Direct. And in this Direct, similar to how the first Mario Bros. Movie Direct had a trailer that showed off Chris Pratt and Jack Black talking a little bit, and we saw a little bit of a focus on Mario and Bowser. And then the second Direct and second major trailer, we saw Anya Taylor-Joy as Peach, and then we saw Seth Rogen as Donkey Kong. I think the next trailer will show Charlie Day as Luigi and Keegan-Michael Key as Toad, and the trailer will have a little bit more focus on those characters for that third big Direct. And I think that's going to be the last one, but there'll be marketing leading up to the release of the movie in April. But once the movie comes out early April, I think there's going to be more to enjoy from Nintendo in April. In April, I think right after, like a week after, about a month before the release for Tears of the Kingdom, we are going to get a Zelda Direct, where they're going to fully outline, detail a whole bunch of things about the game, and we're going to learn a whole slew of things. Pre-orders will have already happened if they've had, with everything else already discussed, with the information we would have gotten about new hardware in January, and then the February Direct showcasing some information about Tears of the Kingdom, more details, where I'm sure there'll be different things that have gone on then, but they'll talk about more details about this game. We'll have a full blowout in early-ish April, a week after the Mario movie, and that's what I think will sort of happen. But I also think there will be a game release in April. I think that game release will be finally Advance Wars. I think Advance Wars will come out in April. There's not going to be too many games that will have come out during that time, so it'll give fans to play something leading up to release of Tears of the Kingdom, and close-ish to mid-May with May 12th for Tears of the Kingdom. So I think that's going to work out well for that game. But then yes, this brings us to May, where we finally see the release for Tears of the Kingdom. And also I'm hoping and thinking there's a decent chance, 40%, that Tears of the Kingdom launches alongside a Nintendo Switch system, Switch Plus, whatever it's going to be called, but an enhanced system that'll be sort of like a pseudo next-gen, not next-gen kind of system. That will happen. I think it's going to be really hype. But let's say we don't get this next new system. What do we get instead? I think we get a Zelda OLED. I think they'll announce that probably maybe in the Zelda Direct in early April, or maybe the Zelda Direct happens a little bit sooner in March, where they announce a Zelda OLED to launch alongside Tears of the Kingdom. This is the alternative option in case there isn't new hardware launching alongside the system. So if you think about it, even though I'm really hyping up this new system idea, because I said 40%, that would also mean that I think there's a 60% chance that there's going to be a Zelda OLED coming out instead. So that's something else to consider. I think regardless, there will absolutely be new hardware launching alongside Tears of the Kingdom. Whether it's a more powerful system or a Zelda OLED, there's going to be something to buy, and I'm definitely saving my money for that time because I think something's coming. That's what I think. Going beyond Tears of the Kingdom, we're now entering June. I think in June, we will see an E3 Direct. We did not get an E3 Direct last year, and there was the COVID year where we didn't have an E3 time. I think this time there will be E3, and that's because I don't think E3 is going to be canceled. Yes, there was debate last year, or rather this year I should say, because E3 is canceled, we weren't sure how Nintendo would handle things, and as it turned out, they spread out a whole bunch of announcements. But also, I think part of the reason why Nintendo didn't have a major E3 presentation or a Direct around E3 is because they didn't have a lot to show off for Tears of the Kingdom. A lot of people would have expected a big Tears of the Kingdom showing in a June Direct. Because they didn't have that ready to show off, because they weren't going to show off new hardware, because there weren't any sort of big major holiday games coming directly from Nintendo, they didn't have that kind of showing this past summer. But this time, for 2023, with Tears of the Kingdom, they're going to have to talk about DLC. I think there's going to be a slew of games coming on the second half of the year that I also think are going to be really exciting that they're definitely going to want to talk about. Now, June's an interesting time because I can see Nintendo not releasing a game during this time and then having something come out in July instead, but there also could be a game still coming out in June, and they use E3 to further showcase and push this game. So what game could that be? Well, there's quite a lineup of games that I sort of expect to come out throughout the second half of 2023, and I kind of expect all these games regardless of there's new hardware or not. There's only one particular game that I'm kind of in between, depending on if there's new hardware or not, and we'll get to that later on to the video. But I'm just gonna say, and I obviously could be wrong on this, but something's gotta come out in June, I think. So I'm gonna say F-Zero GX HD Remaster or 4K Remaster, kind of depending on if there's a new hardware that could run it at that kind of resolution. But I do believe F-Zero is coming. It's been rumored, it's been hinted at by different venues and sites. I really do think this is a real thing, and it is coming, and I think it's going to come out sometime in the summer. So I'm putting it in June, but it could come out a little bit later into the year. But I definitely feel like this is a relatively good time for it. They could showcase it at E3. Maybe they could even have a tournament for it. You know, kind of how they've had Smash and Mario Kart tournaments at E3 in the past, and Splatoon ones as well. Maybe they should do it for F-Zero. Maybe they push it as a big multiplayer game, and maybe that's kind of their angle. They enhance this game, but they really try to sell it as a significant online multiplayer racing game, and maybe that's the angle that they're hoping F-Zero can take, so it becomes more of a significant seller, so F-Zero can become more of a mainstay series. Fingers crossed, but regardless, I believe the rumors. I think they're coming from credible places. F-Zero is coming. It's part of my predictions. Now, I'm not going to bother with coming up with exact timings for the different major DLC releases, but this should be addressed at some point in this video. There's going to be a lot of DLC coming out throughout this year, which is part of why I think things are going to be really hype. We know we're getting a Xenoblade Chronicles 3 story DLC. And if you look at how significant the Xenoblade 2 story DLC was, Torn of the Golden Country, which had its own physical release and for a lot of people was the better game and was still a 30 to 40 hour experience, that's pretty significant. So I expect something comparable, and it will come out sometime in the second half of the year. I'm assuming a little bit earlier, but it could come out towards the end of the year as suggested by some of the marketing there. But that's going to come. But then also, we've been promised that Nintendo's working on some sort of expansion for Splatoon 3 as well. There will probably also be a paid DLC, something similar to the Octo expansion that we saw for Splatoon 2. So another significant DLC release. Another that I think is going to probably be talked about around summertime is the Mario Rabbids DLC. We know we're getting two different quests, one that's coming out in the summer and one towards the end of the year. That last one including Rayman, so that's going to be at least discussed to some extent around the E3 timing, and I expect that that initial story DLC for Rayman, not Rayman, but Mario Rabbids, will be coming out around the summertime because they told us it would. So that's something else significant that'll be coming out as well. But going beyond those, there's even more major DLC to worry about because we still have the Mario Kart DLC. We'll still have Waves 5 and 6 to come out later on into the year. I think Wave 5 will probably come out late summer, but I'll talk more about a little bit later into the video. But also, there's probably going to be DLC for Tears of the Kingdom, and they're going to talk about that probably in an E3 Direct, detailing the DLC that they have planned for Tears of the Kingdom. There'll be a nice, significant trailer there. There's going to be a few different waves. Maybe the story DLC doesn't come out at the end of the year for Tears of the Kingdom. Maybe it's more of an earlier release, so they have like a year window there. But there's going to be DLC for that coming out as well. And the Pokemon Presents that will have come in February, what that's going to detail will be DLC. I probably should have mentioned that earlier. But yes, there's going to be DLC for Pokemon as well, probably a couple different ways. One will come out during the summer, and another will come out late into the year. Pretty much exactly how they handled the DLC for Sword and Shield. It's not going to be any different. Pokemon Company, Game Freak, they're very formulaic, pretty easy to predict. But going beyond June, we'll be entering July, the actual true second half of the year. What could we see in the second half of the year? Well, if new hardware doesn't launch alongside Tears of the Kingdom, I think there's still a great chance it still launches in the second half of the year. And I think they're going to have to announce this at some point or another. So I think this new hardware would probably be announced in either July or August to release in either October or November to launch alongside a big new Mario game, which we'll talk a little bit more about later into the video because I'm trying to do things in order here. But I think basically kind of how I talked about how there could be like some sort of direct detailing new hardware late January, early February. If it doesn't happen then I have a 40% sort of belief that it happens around July or August, and instead of Zelda, it's going to be Mario, this sort of showcase, and also it'll still enhance a whole bunch of games, including Tears of the Kingdom. It'll still have a better looking running version there. So yeah, that's a possibility that I think will be detailed then. But in terms of a game, something that comes to mind that I think makes a lot of sense is Donkey Kong. I talked about it for a while. I've told you guys I really believe this thing. I've heard things behind the scenes. There's been lots of rumors from a whole bunch of different places. I think Donkey Kong has a really good chance to be announced in 2023. Now, I am still open to the idea of it happening in 2024, but the reason why I'm predicting it here, one, because it's fun, just to be totally blunt there, but there's another legitimate reason, and that's because Donkey Kong has a big focus in the Mario movie. And I think that with all this extra attention in the Mario movie, they're going to want IP, they're going to take advantage of that. This is all part of Nintendo's big master plan. They told us about this before. It's no real secret. They use mobile games and movies and theme parks and merchandising to appeal to a larger audience to bring them back to their core IP. So, with Donkey Kong's role in the movie, there's going to be more attention on Donkey Kong. July isn't too far removed for the Mario movie in April. Maybe by that time there's digital release for the Mario movie, so they get that little bit extra hype there, maybe a lot more hype, because the way people are nowadays, we seem to watch things more digitally than in the movies. So they're going to take advantage of that. I think they come out with Donkey Kong around this time, around the summer, and I think it'll fit really nicely, because I'm expecting this Donkey Kong to actually be a 2D Donkey Kong, which I know for some people is going to be kind of disappointing, but I think this Donkey Kong is going to be really good. I think it's going to be like a quasi 2D, 3D kind of game. A 2.5D, I think, is the terminology people would prefer to use. Think like Metroid Dread. Metroid Dread had beautiful visuals, mostly two-dimensional gameplay, but it had a lot of moments that were in 3D when you did the parry attacks, when you would go behind the shoulder to use your beam to fight the enemy. I think there's going to be a lot of moments like that, so they will still feel 3D at times, more so than Tropical Freeze. And perhaps a really good comparison, better than Metroid Dread, would be Jungle Beat, which pretty much kind of did this. Like every time Donkey Kong would hit enemies or have boss fights, it would be behind the shoulder, very much 3D. So I think something like this could be happening for Donkey Kong. I think summertime release to take advantage of the very fresh popularity and excitement for the Mario movie is going to make a lot of sense, which is why I'm leaning towards a Donkey Kong announcement and release in 2023, but it definitely could still happen in 2024. Maybe they'll use the marketing of the Donkey Kong Park instead, or maybe a Donkey Kong movie that's rumored to come after the Mario movie instead to hype up this Donkey Kong game. But either way, either year, but I'm leaning more towards 2023. Now in August, I'm just going to say maybe we see Wave 5 for the Mario Kart DLC, and that's kind of what I'm expecting. Maybe there will be some sort of other big DLC release during this time, maybe for the Xenoblade DLC. That could probably be a decent timing for that. There may be some other sort of random release from Nintendo that I can't think of right now that comes out during this time. There's going to be a game probably coming out every month. There's going to be a few months where there's going to be 2 games coming out. So, you know, there's going to be a lot of months where there's something, but maybe not something I'm going to predict here. So, but yeah, something small is likely. Anyways, going beyond that, I'm going to say in September, we see the release for Pikmin 4. I don't doubt it's coming out this year, and actually I feel that Pikmin 4 is the kind of game that would really benefit from having a higher resolution. Back when Pikmin 3 was coming out for the Wii U, a big talking point was that because the game was finally in HD, it was a great way to showcase a lot of the more small details, because Pikmin is a game that shows a lot of small details. So with Pikmin 4 and this possibility of new hardware and better resolutions, well, they work really well together. So having Pikmin 4 coming out in this year of new hardware, I think makes a lot of sense, which I also think that if I think of things in this way, it kind of supports the idea more so of new hardware coming out sooner than later in the year. But either way, even if they don't go from that angle, Pikmin 4, they tell us it's coming out in 2023, so I'm going to assume it's coming out in 2023, and I think just past summer is a pretty good time for it to come out. Now, as we enter the October and November months, things get a little interesting here. We're going to see more DLC waves come out, like maybe we'll see the Splatoon wave come out, the Pokemon wave will probably come out in November, but there's a couple games coming directly from Nintendo that I expect to come out during this time, and depending on if the new hardware is coming around this time, that can impact which one comes out. But basically, the games are Metroid Prime HD and a new 3D Mario. I think both these games are coming out around this time. I'm going to say that the Metroid Prime game comes out October and the Mario game comes out November. Now, we've seen a lot of major Nintendo games come out in October instead of November because Pokemon has taken up a lot of those major times. But because Pokemon, I think likely, almost certainly is going to be more focused on DLC this year, that opens up the window for a major Nintendo game to come out in November. They've done it before, regardless of if Pokemon's coming out or not. But yeah, I think October for Metroid and November for Mario. So if the new hardware is announced in the second half of the year, I think it could either A, launch alongside Metroid Prime HD in October, or launch alongside the new Mario in November. But what I think makes the most sense is for it to launch alongside the Mario game. So maybe even we see a scenario where Mario comes out before Metroid, maybe it comes out in October, and then Metroid comes out in November, another game to take advantage of the improved visuals for sure, but it's just a November game. And then maybe we see the Pokemon DLC come out around that time as well, and that's kind of okay for Nintendo in terms of content for November. And what's interesting about this strategy, if this is how things work out, is that Nintendo can kind of see, oh, okay, let's put Metroid in November, see how it performs in terms of sales, because Nintendo might also be thinking, hey, we're gonna put out Metroid Prime 4 in 2024. That's when I think Metroid Prime 4 will be ready. So they may want to see, you know, like how well Metroid could do in the holiday time. So that may be something they may do. But either way, those games, that's what I think they're coming out. And yeah, new hardware I think they'll definitely showcase. So yeah, I'm very convinced we're getting new hardware. I'm at 80% here, but I'm leaving open to 20% because maybe we don't get new hardware in the second half of the year or in the first half of the year and it comes out in 2024. And if that's the case, I think Nintendo does not release 3D Mario until that new hardware comes out in 2024 to push that system. And if that is the case, instead of 3D Mario, I think we get a new 2D Mario in 2023. Because I definitely think something Mario has to come out in 2023. And I also definitely think Nintendo has several games that they're just sitting on, and depending on circumstances, they decide which one should come out when. So maybe they want to have new hardware ready, but if it's not ready, or if they don't think the market is really right for it at the time, maybe Switches are just selling too well for them to really want to do that, then maybe they push up this new hardware release until 2024. They save the 3D Mario until 2024 as well, but they still release a new Mario game to take advantage of the increased popularity because of the Mario movie, and that performs magnificently well. And I still think that it could probably be a solid holiday release. I think between a Pikmin and a Donkey Kong and a Metroid Prime HD and then the DLCs from Xenoblade and Splatoon and Pokemon, there's gonna be tons of quality content there, not to mention DLC for Zelda, that they can get away without having a major Mario release for the holiday. So yeah, one or the other. We're either getting 3D Mario or 2D Mario, and it really just kind of depends on when new hardware is coming. So just to quickly clarify this multifaceted prediction, if the new hardware launches in the early part of the year, it'll launch with Tears of the Kingdom in May, and then I think Metroid releases in October and Mario in November. But if the hardware launches in the second half of the year, then I think Mario launches alongside the new hardware in October, and Metroid comes out in November. But if no new hardware comes out at all in 2023, I think there is no 3D Mario in 2023. They save that for 2024 to launch alongside the new hardware, and we get 2D Mario instead. And that's what I think is happening. Those are my predictions for Nintendo in 2023. Now, there is a number of things I left out. Some of you may think, wow, it's a lot of stuff for 2023. Is Nintendo going to have anything left for the years afterwards? And, well, yes. So, similar to how I was talking about how maybe we get 2D Mario or 3D Mario, whichever one comes out in 2023, I think the other one comes out the next year in 2024. But then we also have Metroid Prime 4. I think Metroid Prime 4 will be teased, and we'll see some sort of glimpse of it in 2023, so that's actually another prediction for 2023. But I think Prime 4 comes out in 2024, so that's another game that I think Nintendo will have to help them in the year afterwards. But also, there are the rumors of a Kid Icarus Uprising port. I mean, well, it's rumored because we don't know what it is, but we do know that Bandai Namco is working on some sort of remaster of a classic 3D action game, and Sakurai has suggested that maybe someone should port Kid Icarus, so I do think Kid Icarus is in the works, but I think maybe that comes out in 2024 as well. Not to mention, because of DLC, there will be a new mainline Pokemon game that comes out in 2024. It won't be the next generation, it'll be maybe like another Legends game, for example, but there's a lot of really cool things like that. We still haven't seen what the Mario Kart 8 ARMS team has been working on yet. That could come out in 2023, but also they could save that for 2024, because as I've discussed throughout this video, I feel like we have a lot of really quality games that are going to be coming out throughout this year. And that doesn't even take into consideration other options, like, for example, a new IP from Monolith Soft that we've been waiting years for. That's something else that could come out next year as well, not to mention probably the end of the DLC for Tears of the Kingdom, and maybe we see a 2D Zelda release in the latter half of 2024. So there's really a whole bunch of games that could still come out from Nintendo in 2024, even if I'm 100% right on all my predictions for 2023. So I think regardless, things are going to be pretty good. And I actually feel really confident about at least the games that I think are coming out in 2023. Because most of the things we already know about. We've already mentioned all the quality DLC stuff with Xenoblade and Splatoon and Pokemon and Mario Rabbids and probably Tears of the Kingdom and obviously the Mario Kart waves. But then obviously we have Tears of the Kingdom and Fire Emblem, and there's the Kirby game, and F-Zero's rumored, and I think it's a pretty quality rumor, and then I think Metroid Prime will finally happen. And then there's bound to be at least one Mario game coming out next year because of the Mario movie. And that's pretty good. And I actually feel pretty good about Donkey Kong as well. If not Donkey Kong, something else Nintendo will put in there that will be pretty hype. So, yeah. I think it's going to be a pretty exciting year. Even if we don't get new hardware. There's just a lot of good games that are on the horizon. And I am very, very excited. But what do you guys think? What do you make of my predictions? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you have other ideas? Let me know in the comments below. Anyways, everyone, this is On Just Restart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.